Dracula, The Blood Guardian, Chapter 2. The world talks about heroes. Morning at Transylvania High. The morning sun filtered weakly through the Gothic arches of Transylvania High. Despite the cheerful chatter of students gathering at the gates, I couldn't shake the heaviness pressing on my shoulders. The world had shifted overnight. Not because of my nightmares, those were normal. Not because of Quincy's fist hovering in my peripheral vision, threatening another locker room ambush. No, it was something much bigger. The world had seen something impossible, and every phone in the courtyard had proof. Grant! Jonathan Harker waved across the crowd, his spiky brown hair sticking out in every direction. His twin sister Lauren followed behind him, already scowling at her brother for yelling so loud. I shoved my hands in my pockets and strolled over. Jonathan shoved his phone in my face before I could even say good morning. The video started instantly, moonlight washing over a beach in China, sand scattered with abandoned towels and umbrellas. 3 figures stood in formation, 3 girls in costumes brighter than the neon signs of downtown Shanghai. Their skirts and ribbons swayed in the salty breeze as they raised jeweled staffs, facing the impossible. From the ocean, something rose. A nightmare of writhing tentacles, barnacle-encrusted flesh, and eyes that weren't meant to exist. Water crashed off its bulk, each step sending waves that swallowed lifeguard towers whole. The crowd around the beach screamed. Someone's camera shook as the girls shouted phrases in unison, their staffs glowing like miniature suns. They didn't run. They didn't cower. They fought. I watched in silence as beams of energy clashed with tentacles that cracked stone. The creature roared, a sound like ships breaking apart. Then the video ended abruptly in static. Jonathan grinned. Dude, 3 magical girls versus Cthulhu. On a beach. China is officially hotter than you. Lawrence smacked his arm. It's not a joke, Jonathan. Hundreds were injured. They evacuated the entire resort. My throat was dry. Where? Hainan Island, Lauren said. They're calling it the Hainan Beach Catastrophe. I said nothing, but my chest tightened. Year 10 group chat, hallway hounds. Arthur H. New footage just dropped. Magical girls versus beach squid. Lucy W.E.E.E. The purple one's transformation sequence was gorgeous. Quincy M. fake. Just CGI. I could fight that thing with a cricket bat. Mina M. It's not fake, Quincy. The Chinese government confirmed it. The beach is sealed off. Lauren H. Exactly. They're classifying it as a Category Sigma event. Gretchen E. Lol. Imagine fighting a squid in frilly skirts. At least steal a popsicle first. Jonathan H. Real question. If that thing washed up here, would we all just run? Arthur H. Would Dracula fight it? Lucy W. OMG. Yes! Imagine Grant in a cape striking a pose at the shoreline. I turned off my phone before more nonsense poured in. Homeroom banter. Homeroom was chaos. Half the class was buzzing about the catastrophe. The other half was trying to connect it to the homework due. Lauren cornered me before I even sat down. Don't what? I asked. Don't even think about it, she said, hands on her hips. Jonathan smirked from his desk. She thinks you're planning a trip to China to wrestle sea monsters. I wasn't planning it, I muttered. Lauren leaned closer, narrowing her eyes. You were considering it. I looked away. Maybe? Lucy Westenra, the self-declared queen of cheerleading and Van Helsing's one fangirl, leaned across 2 desks with dreamy eyes. Van Helsing sensei would have handled it perfectly. One flick of his holy sword and poof, no more tentacles. Mina Murray rolled her eyes. You realize he's our teacher, right? Lucy clasped her hands together. And also a centuries-old hunter of monsters. Honestly, Mina, details. From the back row, Gretchen English, our newest transfer student, with her too cool street thief aura, flipped a coin lazily and smirked. Let's be real. If that thing washed up here, half of you would faint. The other half would live stream it. And you, Dracula, she pointed directly at me, would be perched on a rooftop, brooding about the best way to punch an eldritch squid in the face. The class laughed. I sank into my chair. She wasn't wrong. History class. Van Helsing's lesson. Class. Silence fell instantly when Van Helsing entered. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence filled the room. He picked up a stick of chalk and wrote across the board in sweeping strokes. Chthonic beings. Seaborn entities. The air grew heavy. Yesterday's incident in Hainan, Van Helsing said slowly, has reminded us of a crucial lesson. What precisely is the difference between a terrestrial monster and a chthonic horror? Lucy's hand shot up. Terrestrial monsters are, cuter? The class snickered. Van Helsing's expression did not change. Incorrect. I raised my hand. Terrestrial monsters follow the laws of biology. Chthonic horrors don't. They're chaos given shape. Van Helsing's gaze slid to me, sharp as blades. He nodded once. Correct, Mr. Dexter. And should you ever face such an entity? His voice grew lower. His eyes locked on mine. Remember this. You cannot defeat a storm. You can only endure it. The words sank like stones in my chest. Lunch break. Rooftop. The rooftop was my refuge. The smell of cafeteria noodles couldn't reach this high, nor could Quincy's endless taunts. But Mina found me anyway. You're thinking about the Cthulhu fight, she said softly. I stared at the horizon. Yeah, don't. I turned. You don't understand. No, Grant. Her voice shook. I do. You already risk your life in alleys and rooftops. You already fight Bella's thugs. But this? Her eyes glimmered. These aren't gangsters. These are things that can drown a continent. You can't fight them with gadgets and courage. I clenched my fists. So what? I just sit back while others bleed? Her voice cracked. You'll D, Grant! Silence stretched between us, broken only by the wind. Finally I muttered, I'm not invincible. Her shoulders eased, but her eyes stayed fierce. Then stop acting like you are. After school, the old house. The Dexter house wasn't much of a home. Its wooden beams sagged, the wallpaper peeled in strips, and every creak echoed like a ghost of the parents I barely remembered. But in the basement, it became something else entirely, the headquarters of Dracula. Renfield was already there, leaning over a spread of newspapers. His silver hair caught the dim light of the hanging bulb, making him look even more like some retired general than the caretaker the school records listed him as. You've seen the footage, boy? He asked without looking up. Everyone has, I said, pulling off my school jacket. Magical girls, Renfield muttered as though tasting the phrase. And a chthonic horror. China is far, but not far enough. These incidents, they ripple. I leaned against the table. Any chatter from Bella's syndicate? Renfield tapped a headline with one gnarled finger. Local, unusual freight arrives at Transylvania rail yard. Sealed crates under guard. They've moved something in, Renfield said. 3 containers. No paperwork. My contacts say they reek of brine, though they came by land. The thought made my stomach knot. Icor. Renfield's eyes hardened. Exactly. If one drop from the Hainan beach found its way here, I didn't need him to finish. I was already pulling open the locker at the far end of the room. Preparation sequence. Inside the locker hung the armor. Not a cape, not fangs, not some gothic caricature. Just black reinforced plating, layered for mobility, marked with faint red insignias I had stitched myself. The cowl was simple angular lines, dark lenses to mask my eyes. A symbol burned in crimson across the chest. A stylized bat, wings flared. I strapped on each piece slowly, ritualistically. Kevlar weave, carbon fiber plating, grappling gauntlets, utility belt stocked with capsules, smoke pellets, shock bolts, and one experimental device Renfield swore might disable unholy resonance. I didn't want to test that last. As I tightened the gloves, Renfield spoke. You're not fighting magical girls in dresses. You're not a soldier in someone else's war. You're one man against the underworld of this city. Remember your limits. I know. And if Gretchen is there? His voice sharpened. I paused, looking at my reflection in the dull steel. Gretchen English, the brown cat, a thief who could vanish in the cracks of this city, and the only person who could tease me into silence in class. I'll deal with it, I said. Renfield sicked. God help us! The rail yard. Night fell quick in Transylvania. By the time I reached the rail yard, the only lights came from sodium lamps buzzing like dying insects. Rows of cargo containers stretched into darkness. Steel giants sleeping under the stars. But the quiet was a lie. Shadows shifted at the edges. Men with pistols and batons patrolled, their boots crunching gravel. Bella's men. Their jackets bore the faint silver emblem of the hoax syndicate. I crouched atop a crane, scanning. 3 containers sat in the center, cordoned off with makeshift fencing. Guards circled them in disciplined formation, too disciplined for smugglers. Something was inside those crates. Something alive. I tapped the side of my cowl. The lens zoomed in, enhancing the stenciled code on one of the containers. HXN3. My pulse quickened. Ashiksen. Hainan. Descent. I fired a grapnel line and swung low, landing silent on top of a container. The night air was sharp in my lungs. 2 guards walked beneath me. Boss says no one peeks inside. one muttered, lighting a cigarette. The other grunted. Good. Don't want to see whatever's sloshing in there. Smells like dead fish and nightmares. I dropped between them before the lighter could spark. One quick elbow, one sweep of the leg. They hit the gravel silently. Dragging them behind a stack of pallets, I pressed deeper into the yard. Then I froze. A shadow moved with me. Gretchen appears. Psst. The voice was teasing, playful. A coin flipped into the air, catching moonlight. Out for a midnight jog, Dracula? Gretchen English crouched atop a crate 10 meters away, her hood up, her brown eyes glinting like mischief itself. Her tail, an actual cat's tail she wore like a trophy, swished lazily. You shouldn't be here, I hissed. Neither should you, she smirked. But hey, it's romantic, isn't it? Moonlight, gunmen, maybe a sea monster in a box? Go home, Gretchen. Can't. Bella pays better than homework assignments. She twirled her coin, then flicked it. It clinked off the steel container. The guards nearby tensed. You're with them? I asked, voice low. She shrugged. With myself, mostly. But the hoax syndicate has deep pockets, and I like expensive chocolate. The bitterness in my mouth was immediate. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't fully loyal either. Stay out of my way, I warned. Oh, what? Her smile widened. You'll brood harder at me? Before I could answer, a shout rang out. Hey, intruder! Schauserupts. Floodlights snapped on. Dozens of guards raised weapons, swarming like ants. Dracula! One barked. Take him alive! I hurled smoke pellets. Darkness swallowed the floodlights, choking visibility. My grapnel line fired, yanking me onto a catwalk as bullets pinged off steel. From below, Gretchen's laugh rang out, echoing. Showtime, caped boy. I dropped into the fray. My gauntlet blade caught the first thug's rifle, disarming him with a twist. A kick to the ribs sent another sprawling into a container wall. More came. Always more. But the real threat wasn't the men. It was the container. With every blow, with every tremor, something inside it stirred. The steel walls groaned. A wet, gurgling thud echoed like a heartbeat. Then came the hiss. Steam vented from the crate's seams. The smell of salt and rot filled the air. No, I whispered. The lock snapped. The container door buckled outward. And from the darkness inside, a tentacle slithered free. The thing in the crate. The first tentacle slammed against the gravel, slick with seawater that shouldn't exist this far inland. It writhed, tipped with barbs like hooks. Guards stumbled back, shouting in panic, their formation breaking immediately. The door of the container groaned, torn apart like wet paper. It crawled out half-formed, half-rotten, a thing birthed from drowned nightmares. Its body was bloated, mottled with barnacles. Eyes opened and shut at random across its surface, blinking like lanterns in fog. A maw, split across its torso, filled with rows of needle teeth. One man screamed before he could raise his gun. A tentacle seized him by the waist and flung him into a stack of crates. The crunch that followed silenced the others. I dropped into motion. Grapnel fired, yanking me behind the beast. My gauntlet blade cut through a tentacle, spraying black ichor that hissed as it hit the ground. The monster shrieked, a sound like a ship hull tearing. Dracula! One thug shouted desperately. What the hell do we do? Run, I snapped. Unless you want to die. Gretchen's choice. Gretchen perched atop a container, frozen for once, her coin forgotten in her hand. Her smirk was gone, replaced by something harder to read, fear, awe, or both. She met my eyes across the chaos. Cat, I shouted, parrying another flailing limb. Pick a side! Her mouth twitched. Then she leapt down, knives flashing in her hands. She cut the straps on a cargo net, dropping steel pipes onto one of the monster's tentacles. It screeched, writhing. I'm not dying for Bella's paycheck, she yelled. But you owe me, Dracula! I couldn't help it. I almost smiled. Improvised arsenal. The beast surged forward, smashing crates like toys. Every step it took seemed to grow it larger, feeding on the fear in the air. I reached for the capsule Renfield had warned me about the resonance disruptor. A silver orb, etched with runes. My last resort, but I needed time to arm it. Cover me! I shouted. Gretchen didn't argue. She darted around the spawn with feline agility, knives flashing. She wasn't strong, but she was fast, slashing shallow cuts, drawing its attention. I knelt, priming the orb. My hands shook. If this thing didn't work, if it wasn't tuned right, I was just a kid in body armor facing a god's offspring. The spawn roared, whipping a tentacle straight at me. Move! Gretchen shrieked. I rolled aside. The tentacle slammed into the ground, cracking concrete where I had knelt. My thumb pressed the activator. The orb hummed, vibrating like a living heart. Detonation. I hurled it into the spawn's open maw. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then a shockwave burst outward, soundless, but heavy, pressing against my skull. The spawn convulsed, shrieking without air, its limbs spasming. Black ichor gushed from its mouth as it collapsed into the gravel, thrashing. The resonance grew louder, until the very air quivered. Then, silence. The spawn lay still. Its body dissolved into a slurry of brine and rot, seeping back into the ground as though it had never been. Only the stench remained. Aftermath. The rail yard was wrecked. Guards had fled. Floodlights buzzed over toppled crates and splintered fences. I stood, panting, my armor slick with black ichor. My ears still rang from the orb's discharge. Gretchen leaned against a container, knives sheathed, chest rising and falling. She was pale, but her eyes were sharp. "You're insane," she said finally. "Maybe." She kicked at a chunk of barnacle, grimacing. "What the hell was that thing?" "Something that should have stayed at the bottom of the ocean," I muttered. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, softer. "If you hadn't been here, I was." Her smirk returned, weak but familiar. "Guess that makes you my hero, huh?" I didn't answer. The shadow watching. As Gretchen slipped into the night, I climbed back onto the catwalk. My cowl's lenses scanned the ruins. No more movement, no more ichor, but I wasn't alone. From a distant rooftop, a figure watched tall, armored in crimson plating, a mask shaped like a hawk. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The Blood Guardian. Even from here, I could feel his gaze cold, calculating, hungry, and then, as silently as he'd appeared, he vanished. I clenched my fists. The magical girls in China had fought one of these things with light and purity. Me? I had a borrowed gadget, a thief at my side, and luck. But if monsters like that were crawling ashore everywhere, the world was changing. And Dracula had to change with it. Morning fallout. By the time the morning bell rang at Transylvania High, the rail yard attack was already all over the group chats. Not officially, no news outlets dared print Eldritch Spawn, but the rumors had spread like wildfire. At Cheer Squad Queen Lucy, I heard it was a mutated crocodile. At QB Morris, nah, my cousin's uncle's mate said it was a Yakuza bioweapon. Government cover-up. At Arthur H, I don't think crocodiles dissolve into sludge. At Minastar, something big is happening. Did you see the videos from China? At Jonathan Harker, guys, focus. We have exams. Monsters don't take finals for us. At Lauren Harker, shut up, John. Everyone's freaking out and you're worried about algebra? The notifications on my phone piled up. Every group I was in pinged with speculation. Some students swore they heard gunfire last night near the rail yard. Others claimed they saw me the Bat in Black, the Shadow Protector, the urban legend they were already calling Dracula in hushed tones. Funny, I hadn't named myself that. The city had. Van Helsing's class. The first period was history, but in Van Helsing's hands, history was never just about the past. He stood at the blackboard, chalk in hand, his voice deep and unshakable. His scarred features cast strange shadows in the morning sun filtering through the blinds. Patterns, children, he began, scrawling a jagged map across the board. Civilizations fall when they pretend monsters don't exist. He tapped the chalk at China. 3 magical girls held back an old one at Hainan Beach. And last night, his eyes flicked briefly, knowingly toward me. Something crawled out of our own backyard. The class tittered nervously. Lucy Westenra leaned forward, chin in her palms, eyes sparkling. So you're saying heroes are real, sir? Heroes. Van Helsing's smile was faint, bitter. Sometimes, more often, survivors. But survivors are remembered as heroes by those who live long enough to tell the tale. Arthur Holmwood raised his timid voice. Yes, sir. The news said it was gang violence, not a monster. Of course they did. Van Helsing's chalk broke in his hand, but he didn't flinch. People need lies more than they need truth. It keeps them sane. Then he turned, gaze sweeping the room, landing like a hammer. But you lot, if you want to live in this new world, learn to see past the lies. The room went silent. And then, of course, Quincy Morris ruined it. Bet if I'd been there, I'd have punted that thing back into the sea. Easy. He smirked, flexing his bicep. Unlike some of us who hide under desks. Arthur shrank back. Jonathan shot Quincy a glare. You wouldn't last 10 seconds, cowboy? I stayed quiet, but Van Helsing's eyes lingered on me as if to say, "Don't you dare forget what you saw." Lunch gossip. By midday, the whole school buzzed like a hive. The courtyard echoed with overlapping theories. Lucy and Mina sat together at a bench, their cheer uniforms swapped for casual skirts. Lucy twirled her hair, clearly enjoying the attention. "I'm telling you, Mina, it was a hero. Like those magical girls in China. Someone stopped the monster last night." Mina stirred her lunch quietly. Or someone barely managed to. Jonathan and Lauren joined, dropping their trays down. Jonathan immediately dove into the debate. "My money's on a vigilante," he said. "Black armor gadgets. Some one-night heroing it up. Makes sense." "Like that DC hero?" Lucy wrinkled her nose. "What kind of name is that? Whoever it is, they're cooler. Dracula, did you see the memes?" She shoved her phone toward Lauren, showing a pixelated, shadowy photo from the rail yard me. Mid-grapple. Caption. "Dracula saves Transylvania from sewer kraken." Lauren blinked, hiding her blush behind her hair. "Dracula, huh?" Mina, though, kept staring at the photo longer than the others. Her lips pressed into a thin line, as if she knew more than she let on. I chewed my sandwich in silence. The taste barely registered. Rooftop? With Mina, classes dragged. By the time the last bell rang, my nerves were frayed. I escaped to the rooftop, the only place quiet enough to think. The wind tugged at my jacket, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves. Skipping cleaning duty? I turned. Mina stood at the doorway, hair shimmering in the evening sun. She walked over, her steps light, but deliberate. I sighed. Needed air. She leaned against the railing beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. The city stretched out below, indifferent and endless. Finally, Mina broke the silence. "That monster at the rail yard, you saw it, didn't you?" I froze. "Why would you think that?" Her eyes met mine, steady, almost too knowing. "Because you're different, Grant. You're always tired, always carrying something invisible. And last night, when everyone else panicked, you weren't scared." I looked away. The sunset bled across the horizon, red as fresh wounds. "If I said yes," I murmured, "what would you do?" She smiled faintly. "I'd say, thank you for keeping us safe, even if no one else knows it." Something twisted in my chest. No one had thanked me, not Renfield, not Van Helsing, not even myself. I almost reached for her hand. Almost. But the words tangled in my throat, and the moment slipped away like sand through fingers. In the shadows. Far from the school, in a derelict factory on the edge of town, a figure adjusted his crimson armor. The Blood Guardian stood before a holographic projection images of the magical girls at Hainan Beach, the rail yard spawn, and me. "Dracula," he said, his voice distorted through his helm. "The city breeds a new hero, how quaint." His gauntleted hand curled into a fist. "They fired me for culling weakness, but this world is changing. Monsters don't wait for permission. Neither will I." He gestured, and mercenaries in black armor bowed before him. "Let the magical girls have their light. Let this Dracula lurk in shadows. I will drown them all in blood." The projection shifted schematics of something monstrous, a fusion of flesh and steel. A weapon meant not to fight monsters, but to become one. The Blood Guardian's laughter echoed, cold and sharp. The closing thought. Back on the rooftop, Mina had left, her warmth lingering like a ghost. I stood alone, fists clenched on the railing, staring at the stars just beginning to pierce the twilight. If magical girls were fighting nightmares on foreign shores, if monsters could crawl out of shipping crates in my own city, then there was no normal left for me. Not Grant Dexter, not the boy with a broken past. Only Dracula. And now, the plague war just began.
It's Hanako here again. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And feel free to share this video with anyone who might enjoy it too. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next video.